What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Danny and Bush coming at you with Dynasty Decisions, episode 61. We took a little bit of a hiatus this weekend. It was a long weekend. I was still recovering with COVID, but we are back. We are ready to get into your guys' teams, your guys' questions, all of your, am I rebuilding? Am I contending type of stuff. You guys know what we do around here. If you want to be members of our Patreon, they get first access to Dynasty Decisions episodes. They get first dibs to be on the videos. And if you want to get added to the queue to be on future videos, you know what to do. Reach out to us on Twitter, Discord, email, all that stuff kind of linked in the description as well. Me and Danny have our, Fantasy Stock Exchange mugs here with our caffeinated beverages in here. So if you guys want to, go check out the merch, fantasystockexchange.co is where you can get that. Danny's wearing his Ladster sweater as well. We haven't really plugged that very much since we dropped it, so we figured we'd kind of talk about that. But anyways, a lot of mumbo jumbo at the start of the video. Danny, how you doing?
Doing well, doing well. And yeah, the common thing you're going to notice from a lot of these teams in this video is that they have an FSC type of structure to their build. A lot of picks, not a lot of running backs. And as you guys know, we're going to have a lot of fun going through some of these teams in terms of the actual construction, because it's very similar to what we would do in our startups.
Before we get into the first team, as always, if you guys enjoy, hit the like button, comment any of your thoughts down below, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Today is August 1st. So I think there's football on this week. The Hall of Fame game this week. We got
Thursday.
preseason football. We're going to have you covered for all the, notable usage and stuff like that once we get into preseason games. But with that being said, let's get into it. Let's hit the intro. All right, so a lot of patron submissions this week. The first one from Luca Carol, 12-team, 1 quarterback, half PPR league. Speaking of the devil, we got Deshaun Watson as his main quarterback with Justin Fields, Zach Wilson as his other two guys. Breece Hall as his main running back, DK Metcalf, Deontay Johnson, Drake London, Devontae Smith, Garrett Wilson, Wan'Dale Robinson. And I put fodder here, but it was like actually some decent depth, like DJ Chark types and stuff like that. So really deep wide receiver core, tight end, Noah Fant as his main dude, 6 2023 first, 2 2024 first, 3 2024 seconds, and then all of his other picks. So he just had this startup, and he said it was his first time in a dynasty league playing with mostly redraft players. So again, when you're faced with that scenario, you can build teams like this, and maybe the people in your league don't understand how you've built this and how scared they should be, but they'll know pretty soon.
Yeah, this team is already very good. I mean, you got your main workhorse running back. Obviously, like, to contend this year, people are going to say, well, you don't have the running back depth. But the way you've constructed your running back room, you got one future running back that you can really rely upon, especially 2023 on. That wide receiver core is absolutely set. And in a one quarterback league, having Watson, Fields, and Wilson is a really, really good position to be in. But once your team gets to add 6 of those, elite type of prospects next year, or potentially leverage some of those picks for, ready to win now type of talent, your league mates are going to be very, very upset with their own inability in being able to compete with your team after you have, Bijan added to this team or Gibbs added to this team. Tucker, I mean, you went through the video or the exercise, a couple days ago, talking about the top 2023 prospects on paper and doing a rookie mock draft. And I mean, you went 12, 15 names deep with guys that can really, really explode this year.
Yeah, exactly. And there was a number of running backs, 6 or 7 running backs that I talked about in that video. And if some of the things break right for those guys, we have Zach Evans, Tank Bigsby, Devon A-Chain, Zach Charbonnet as depth in that class to go along with the top 3 dudes that we talked about. So yeah, if you can add, Bijan, Tucker, Michael Mayer as another tight end piece to this team, a couple other, wide receiver prospects, this thing could be an absolute monster. And that's pretty crazy that you were able to build a team this well constructed during the startup. Your league mates must have no idea how to value draft picks based on like the player. You still have really good players on your team. Also with having, 8 firsts in the next 2 drafts and a couple extra seconds too.
If you were to tell me, you had, 2 2023 firsts and like 2 2024 firsts with the team you constructed, I would have been like, oh yeah, no, that's about appropriate. That's about what your team should be looking like. But the fact that you have this team with 8 combined firsts in the next 2 years, like, yeah, ship it. I mean, imagine adding Bijan and Travion Henderson to this team. Like, your league mates are going to just be, jaw to the ground.
Yeah, exactly. So he said, would love to get some advice for how he should move forward with his roster and picks. Like Danny said, I mean, like once you get to the 2023 class, you own that draft, you control the tone of it basically. And people are going to come to you if they want prospects. People are going to, potentially overpay for certain rookies. If it's more of a casual league too, people are probably going to realize what they did at some point this season when their team is, 2-7 and they don't have their first round pick because they traded it away to trade up in like the 7th round of the startup or something like that. So you're going to really take advantage of these guys not knowing what they're doing, and they're going to be playing catch up mode to try and compete with you in the future. So you're going to be at a really good spot to either spend most of those picks, which I would probably advise doing because the weaknesses on your roster align with the strengths of the class. You can get yourself, a Michael Mayer type at tight end. You can get yourself a couple running backs, maybe another wide receiver or two. And at that point, you're just in a really, really good spot to be able to fill out your team with the assets you've accumulated.
Yeah, no, exactly. Great work. First startup. I couldn't tell the way you built this team out
He
because
said he's been grinding our videos for like 2 months.
appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
I can clearly tell.
yeah, exactly. So definitely, if you're in a room like that where people don't know what they're doing, it's free money. Like it's definitely harder nowadays that we've noticed me and Danny trying to do this strategy with leagues with you guys because you know what we're trying to do. But if you're the only one who knows this strategy in a league, like it's extremely, extremely profitable. So Jonathan Keeler, next team that we have here, a member of the Tone Setters tier on Patreon, 12-team PPR, half point tight end premium. I believe it is a 1-quarterback league. So Jalen Hurts is his main guy, Tannehill, Jimmy Garoppolo as his main quarterbacks there. Madison, Michelle, most are pretty fragile at running back. Again, common theme that you're going to see in this video. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, Adam Thielen, Alec Pierce, and then some solid depth there. And then tight ends, Hunter Henry, Trey McBride, Jelani Woods. And, dude, the picks. My God, 4 2023 first, 9 2023 seconds, 6 2023 thirds. Again, another example of people just not knowing what the fuck they're doing when it comes to draft picks. And you also have 4 firsts in 2024, 9 seconds again in 2024, 5 thirds in 2024. You have a war chest. And again, another team, you have a war chest while also having some foundational dudes. I'd expect you to have like one good player on this team.
Can we point to the fact that he also somehow finagled the guy into getting his 2025 3 and 4?
Yeah, literally.
It's just like, 2024 picks, I got enough. Give me that 2025 pick, which he probably gave to you for like a 20th round startup pick because he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. But overall, I mean, this team is absurd for the amount of draft capital you have. Like for that type of draft capital, I would expect your team to like only be like Hurts, Elijah Moore, Devontae Smith, and maybe like Trey McBride, given the capital that you have there. But then you add AJB, you add Tannehill, Jimmy Garoppolo, Garrett Wilson, Adam Thielen, etc. Like this is just absurd. And I mean, we mentioned with the last team, but you structured this in the way, and something that we've been preaching, for the last year and a half or so is that you've structured your team to the point where you desolated your running back position. The cheapest opportunity cost to get running backs is always going to be in the rookie drafts, specifically in the next 2 years, where we could see probably 10, maybe up to 15 running backs take over starting roles with, other guys declining. Obviously, the 2017 class hitting their 27, 28, 29-year-old seasons. So a lot of opportunity in terms of starting jobs are going to be made available within these next few years. And the fact that you have all of the dart throws to get those potential lead backs, to get those potential workhorse running backs for the future. And I mean, imagine you were able to do this in the 2017 class and you just were looking afterwards with Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones, Christian McCaffrey, et cetera there. You could be looking at a similar situation after you make and materialize those 2023 and 2024 picks.
Yeah, imagine having 9 twos in the 2017 class. You would have been able to add all those like mid and late day 2 running backs that were in that class. And the same could be said for some of the guys in this year's class as well. So phenomenal job. You've definitely, been paying attention, obviously. You've been a tone setter of ours for a couple months now. So definitely appreciate the support there. He also said he was able to get a lot of great value on wide receivers on the same team. As you guys notice, he has A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, Garrett Wilson, and Elijah Moore. He said he got Devontae Smith at the 906 and Elijah Moore at the 801 because people were scared about the addition of those guys. And I mean, I literally put out a video like earlier in the offseason called by these wide receivers, the T. Higgins effect with Devontae Smith and Elijah Moore for that exact reason. Because people are like, they can't contextualize that multiple wide receivers on teams can be successful. They see, 10th overall pick Garrett Wilson, that's the end for Elijah Moore. High-priced wide receiver A.J. Brown, that's the end for Devontae Smith. No, that's not how it works.
Yeah, no, the problem with a lot of people is that they're so DFS-centric, they're so redraft-centric that in DFS and overall season long, like, yeah, situation is going to matter in terms of overall ceiling point potential. However, as me and Corey and a lot of you have been watching us know, that in Dynasty, situations are temporary. Talent lasts. And for a lot of these guys, Devontae Smith, Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, et cetera, their year one may be comparatively lower to if obviously AJB wasn't on the team and obviously if the Jets didn't select Wilson 10th overall. However, as we know, if they are good players long term, it's going to end up equaling out. And we believe all four of those guys that you got at really good value are good players. So getting that discount, getting that uncertainty discount because your league mates don't really know how to go about them is going to make yourself look like a monster like you did. I mean, 801 Elijah Moore. Oh, I would kill to have that type of value in a draft.
Yeah, I've like never gotten Elijah Moore lower than like the 4th round anytime I've drafted him. So
Literally.
definitely a great job. He says overall direction, you're doing a great job. Just keep building out your team. Leverage some of those picks if you want to. If you see buy low window opportunities, if you want to go, mid-season trade like a 2023 second, get your hands on like a Calvin Ridley type because he's going to go up in value. You can definitely pick your spots in that type of range. During the season, we're definitely going to try and cover more dynasty decisions, trade targets and stuff like that than we did last year, because I do think the season shouldn't affect dynasty value as much as it does, because people will take into account, if Chris Godwin is not on the field yet for the Buccaneers and it's week 7 and, he hasn't played a game yet, people will just inherently value him less, and they shouldn't, because that should have been expected.
You could have a scenario this year. Again, this is just a random one I thought of, but you mentioned if Chris Godwin doesn't play, let's say even the first 4 games, right? Let's say Allen Robinson goes out week 1 and 2, and he's like a 18 point per game type of scorer. You might see a contender leverage a Chris Godwin into an Allen Robinson and just be like, oh, well, I want the player that's going to help me win now. But as we know, in actual startups, a Godwin would go round 5, round 6, and A-Rob would go round 9. So for your perspective, being patient and understanding relative market value in the long term is going to help you get values in season once people have that inherent panic that will always happen, weeks 3, 4, 5, 6, where people really forget the roots of dynasty and what it means in terms of projectable long-term value.
Yeah, exactly. And you have the gift that they don't have, which is time, because you're not competing. So you can afford to wait on those guys to appreciate in value. So Godwin, Calvin Ridley types, guys that aren't going to be as valuable this year as they might be in the future, are always good trade targets for a team in your situation. So let's move on to the next team here. Mark Jankowski, 12 team, start 10, PPR, 6 point per passing touchdown. No tight end premium, I believe. Yeah, so a super flex 6 point per passing touchdown, a lot of value to the quarterback position. He said this was the startup. From jump, he said 10 guys were drafting win now teams in his league. So there was 2 guys, one of them being him, that were not doing that. And he said after his first trade back for future picks, people were practically outbidding each other to get his on the clock startup picks. And that's always a great position to be in, because you're able to do exactly what you did. Again, I told you there's a similar theme to this video with all these teams that people have sent us. As you look at the team, he's got Mac Jones as his main quarterback in a super flex league. Obviously not a good situation to be in. Brian Robinson, a bunch of trash cans at running back, but he has Metcalf, he has Waddle, he has Elijah Moore. So he has a couple wide receiver building blocks, a couple decent tight ends with Fant and Brevin Jordan. He's 7 1s, 6 2s, 2 3s in 2023, 5 1s, 2 2s, 2 3s in 2024.
You know what's the greatest part about being in a league like this, where you mentioned 10 guys are trying to, draft to win now right off the bat, is that they are all valuing their firsts as late, right? They're all valuing their firsts as late. Well, guess what? If you're in a 12-man league and 10 guys are doing that, like somebody who's valuing their firsts as late, he just gets the 103 out there. Like, what's stopping that from happening? You have all of the upside in your position. You have all of the upside from your perspective, being that they are so funneled in, they are so tunnel visioned in to wanting to compete and wanting to win now, that ultimately, as we know, from a supply and demand standpoint, if 10 separate people are competing for the same win now assets, it's going to drive up the price of the asset that you're giving. So let's just say, a win now type of point producer, say you want to flip, Brian
Keenan
Robinson,
Allen, Mike Evans.
Yeah, any of them. I was just going to say, from your team perspective, let's say Antonio Gibson misses 3 games or 4 games, and somebody's willing to give you, a 2023 2-3 right now for Brian Robinson. Somebody else might come in and say, oh, well, I'll give you 2 2s because I need that production. And in this type of scenario, you can just leverage it off and play, best offer wins, come, take your pick, which you've already done with this league. And you mentioned 7 2023 first. if 10 guys are going win now, you are almost assuredly at least one or two of those picks are going to be in the top 6 of your draft. And if you're getting that in conjunction with your pick, which you expect to be early given the structure of your team, yeah, like by 2024, where you still have 5 first, you're probably already going to be a semi-competitive, what's the term you always call it? Free year, cash year?
Yeah, like a house
Free
money year.
house money year. Yeah. You'll be in a house money type of year to just see where your team's at in 2023 while still having the leverage and back end of 5 first in your disposal.
Yeah, and you might even be able to trade down more in the 2023 class and collect more 2024
Yeah.
capital or whatever the case is. So he has a couple questions here. He said he built out his wide receiver corp somewhat, got good value on Metcalf, Waddle, Elijah Moore. I mean, those guys are victims of circumstance right now. Metcalf doesn't have a good quarterback. Waddle has Tyreek Hill there. Elijah Moore, people are uncertain about Zach Wilson, but we know about all three of those players that they're good wide receivers. So good investments to make in your team's situation. He said, how would you address the quarterback situation? Play the long game and load up in the 2023 class. Trade for a quarterback in season if the opportunity presents itself. If we didn't get the Deshaun Watson ruling today, I would have said go after Deshaun Watson because he'd be perfect for this team. But I mean, he's probably going to go up in price now. So maybe you could still inquire about it. Maybe your league mates don't know or still don't want Deshaun Watson on their team for, moral reasons or something like that. He'd be a guy that I would inquire about. Any quarterback that gets injured this year, like let's say, for example, Justin Herbert tears his ACL week 4, then you can buy low on a guy like him because he's a young quarterback. He'll bounce back just fine. So any elite quarterbacks, if they get injured this season, I would buy low on somebody like that. But for the most part, I'm cool just waiting, load up on CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Caleb Williams in the next couple of draft classes.
Or as the hype gets built up on them, maybe you can leverage, Mac Jones and one of those first to go after a difference making type of quarterback at that point. Because once people see the hype, once people see, the class keep materializing, and you can go, as much as I love Mac Jones, I think he's, safe long term. If you can go from Mac Jones to say Deshaun Watson while only having to leverage 2023 first, it might be available in this league. I mean, you might even be able to go say the person who drafted Deshaun Watson now facing a 6-game suspension. You can hit them up and say, hey, listen, obviously, long term, Mac Jones is not going to be able to, produce as much as Watson will. But because you're a win now contender, because you want to keep afloat to start the year, maybe, Mac Jones and would you give Jones and Waddle or Jones in the first?
Yeah,
Or Deshaun Watson at that point?
Knowing the dynamic of your league, you might even be able to do Mac Jones and 2-2s and Brian Robinson or some shit. You could definitely get away with something like that, given your league dynamic. So I think you have a lot of options at the quarterback position, but your fallback position really is just, address it. You mentioned the cheapest you can get running back productions in the rookie draft. It's also the cheapest you can get great quarterback production as well.
Exactly.
If Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Caleb Williams, Quinn Ewers, some of the quarterbacks that are coming out in the next 2 years turn into superstar top 10 dynasty startup picks in the coming years, that's definitely possible that you can just, draft those guys at a cheap cost.
Yep. No, I agree. So overall, just be patient, see when opportunities present themselves. And again, that's the beauty of not being purely for production, purely to try to win now, that you can play the long game. You can play value stretches and bet on basically stocks that are almost sure to go up in value. Like Deshaun Watson was the prime example last year. If you approached an owner that had Deshaun Watson, who was suspended last year, who was on the NFL exempt list last year, you're paying 60 cents max on the dollar. And finding those situations this year, I'd go out, maybe gauge what the Calvin Ridley owner has, what he's kind of valuing Calvin Ridley at. I would gauge, again, if the Deshaun Watson owner wants to sell low, et cetera. Other situations like that are going to keep materializing throughout the year. You mentioned a Herbert scenario where Herbert, shredded his knee, God forbid, you're getting him, a top 3 overall asset in Dynasty Fantasy Football in a redraft centric type of league that are only looking for the immediate production for, as I said, 80 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, exactly. So he has a couple other questions here. Completely punted his running back production. He said, Danny, my running back room would make you blush in embarrassment. He said, I'd like to pick up 3 to 4 running backs in the rookie draft, any in-season targets. So on the in-season point, I'm probably not addressing any running back type of asset. And maybe in the rare scenario that Breece Hall gets injured, a guy that is going to hold value because he's a young running back, I would maybe target somebody like that. But any other running back fodder piece or anything like that, not looking to add any running back production to my team. If you want to address your running back position in the 2023 class, that's cool. But you're still probably 2 years away from even trying to compete. So you don't necessarily need to load up on 2023 running backs necessarily either. You can, address the quarterback position, grab yourself a foundational tight end like Michael Mayer, maybe grab another wide receiver and maybe add a Bijan or maybe one other running back. But I wouldn't necessarily go to your running back position in the rookie draft and be like, my running back position is the weakest. I got to draft Bijan, Gibbs, and Tucker when, maybe the value dictates that, a quarterback or a tight end or something is better value at that pick. So I wouldn't force anything. You also have 6'2s too. So always going after guys like this year, the Dameon Pierce, Tyler Algier, Rashad White, Isaiah Spiller types. I'm sure there's going to be guys like that in next year's class too.
Like Corum.
Yeah, Blake Corums and, Zach Charbonnets and guys like that you can get in the second round that you can use to fill out your depth that way. So premier draft capital, I would be looking to hone in on your quarterback position if you can. But for the most part, I think you should be in a great spot. He also says, how would you handle the 6 seconds? I pretty much kind of described how I would handle them. Take a shot on, best player available. You could always try and flip them on the clock to veteran players if you notice that there's buy low windows on injured guys or anything like that. And then he also says, any advice on how to maximize my picks pre-draft and on the clock? I mean, as a general rule, these picks are always going to accumulate value pretty much until the start of the combine and the big time draft season next year. You're going to be wanting to hold those picks. But once you get into March, April, May type area, then they're going to be at peak value and you can choose to either, spend them on players that you love or flip them if you're getting good value on veterans. Let's go on to Chan Hughes here. 12-team Superflex League, half PPR with a 1.5 tight end premium, so pretty high value placed on the tight end position. He has Trey Lance as his main quarterback, but not a ton going on after that. Saquon Barkley, Kenneth Walker, Tony Pollard, Rashad White, a couple guys there at running back. A.J. Brown, Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Jerry Jeudy, Brandon Ayuk, David Bell, etc. at wide receiver. Noah Fant, Gerald Everett as his main tight ends. In the 2023 class, he has 4 picks. In the first round, likely top 3, one of them, and then his own first as well, which I would consider probably pretty early as well, and then a mid to late one, and then a likely late one. So kind of relatively sporadic 2023 first there. He also has, looks like 5 seconds by the looks of it, and 2 of them expected to be really, really early, and then his own, which will probably be early as well. So a lot of picks in the 2023 class. He also has an extra second in 2024. So he basically tore this one down last season, thinking that he could possibly compete in 2023. He said, me and one other team are pretty much the owners of all the firsts and seconds in the 2023 class. He said he got an offer from a rebuilder that he really considered for Matthew Stafford, but he ended up turning it down. Good call for sure. He was offered Matthew Stafford and Hunter Renfrow in exchange for his likely top 3 2023 first and a 2023 third. Again, good thing that you didn't accept this because it doesn't align with your team's goal, right? Like you're even if you add Matthew Stafford to this team, maybe in an absolute 99th percentile range of outcomes, Barkley's a superstar. Walker gets on the field because of a Rashad Penny injury. Lance and Stafford's enough to get you by at the quarterback position. Fant turns into something. Maybe you could compete this year, but it's betting way too much on that scenario. So I think you did the smart thing here. Hold the pick. Don't invest in the declining older quarterback that you would only really be useful to you if you were ready to compete right now.
Yeah, no, exactly. In your position, point blank, you don't need a Matthew Stafford production wise, because I mean, you have a good young team that you can build around, but ultimately that pick, that top 3 projected pick is, I mean, no matter what way it goes, Bijan Robinson's going to be a first round pick as long as he gets, top 20 draft capital and he doesn't, completely blow it this year in college football, which obviously would be hurtful for Corey being a Longhorn Nation member. But yeah, Bijan Robinson's going to be a first round starter pick. And then we're already making the debate next year that say Stroud and Young are probably going to be top 5 to 10 NFL draft picks. They're going to be at or above Matthew Stafford's ranking in terms of dynasty, just going into the startups next year. But then we also consider where you're at in terms of your team, given the fact that you're a younger built team, that you have so much draft capital, that 2023 is probably your winning year. Stafford's going to be a 35-year-old quarterback that inherently is going to lose value as, dynasty market's going to accept the fact that he's older. A younger option like Justin Fields could surpass him, Trevor Lawrence, obviously next year's rookie class. So ultimately here you're paying full value for a quarterback that doesn't have as much sustained long-term value and doesn't fit the fact that you're not trying to necessarily win year one. Like if you had a full contender and you wanted to make this move, I'd be fine with it. But the fact that you're not, a top 3 overall team in your league, top 4 overall team in your league, it just kind of feels like you're selling an asset that's guaranteed to go up while Stafford doesn't have that in his range of outcomes.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. He did say that he declined the trade and somebody, a
Yep.
contender, traded for Stafford. So he's wondering, would Tua Tagovailoa be like a quarterback that you would go after? I like the idea of going after another quarterback, but Tua would not be the guy I would go after. I would see what
Zach
it costs
Wilson,
to go and get Zach Wilson or one of those like those second year guys. You already
Fields.
have Trey Lance on your team. If you want another young quarterback, again, I mean, Watson's window might be closed, so you probably wouldn't be able to go after him. But Zach Wilson would be the guy that I would inquire about. You have a bunch of twos on your team. If you could send that likely late 2023 first and then maybe a two, like one of the early twos, you might be able to get Zach Wilson off of a team that maybe doesn't believe in him, because Zach
Might not
Wilson is
even cost that
a guy that's
much.
very divisive across, most people. Some people think he's good. Some people think he's terrible. The guy who has Zach Wilson might be willing to sell him for like a first and a second.
Yeah, I don't even think it might cost that much given the pessimism that we've seen from Zach Wilson. Like one of those first might be able to get it done given the current market. So if you can do that, I mean, yeah, worst case scenario, like I would probably keep the 201, 202. But if you have to throw in one of those mid to late 2023 seconds, I think is about where market value is at on Zach Wilson.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, just specifically on Tua, the reason I wouldn't go after him is because I think he's on shaky ground with the Dolphins organization. It's not because I don't think Tua
Yeah.
is good, which I mean, like I'm not high on Tua from a talent perspective, but we know that the Dolphins aren't high on Tua from a talent perspective, which is the more important thing because they're the one making the decision. And if Tua does not take a huge step this year and he's inhibiting the offense, Tyreek and Waddle are like sulking on the sidelines because they can't get the ball or something, then they're going to make a splash at quarterback, whether it's drafting a guy or trading for somebody or whatever the case is. So I think Tua, just the type of team that you have right now, there's no reason to inherit that kind of risk because you're better off just holding your picks at that point.
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking at what some disgruntled veteran that might want to move to the Dolphins, I mean, they got a very good situation. I mean,
Could be Aaron
realistically,
Rodgers might want to go there. Who knows?
could you imagine, by the way, Aaron Rodgers with Tyreek Hill speed?
Yeah, and
Oh
Waddle
god.
speed.
And Waddle speed, yeah, Jesus. But either way, you've built this team well. I as we kind of said, just keep proactive, keep looking at potential values you can do. Obviously, you have a good team that could potentially, have a house money type of year, but realistically, your window is going to be 2023, potentially 2024. So ultimately, just keep your head down, see if you can get a valuation on one of those young quarterbacks and move accordingly.
Yeah, and the last thing I would say is if Barkley looks like superstar Saquon Barkley, maybe you can get a package for multiple firsts for him at the midseason point. Because, I mean, you could probably use him on your team and hold him, and he'll probably be good going forward. But if you can capitalize on somebody being like, dude, Saquon again, and somebody's willing to give you a Godfather offer midseason, I'd be cool moving him at that point. But before we get into the next team, as always, got to pay some bills around here. Hear from our sponsors over at Manscaped. What's happening, y'all? Crotch discomfort hurting your game? Fear no more. The kings of crotch comfort, Manscaped, have spent 2 years designing the most comfortable boxer briefs out there. They're sleek, they're soft, they're comfortable, and they're flexible. The brand new Boxers 2.0 from Manscaped take your balls to the royal ball throne. The global leaders in below-the-waist grooming, as you guys should know by now, have the legendary Lawnmower 4.0 for the trimming, so you can wear the Boxers 2.0 for the chillin'. They even trademarked the jewel pouch, which, I mean, you guys probably can imagine what goes in there, so you know it's serious. I think it's time that you invest in your family jewels, so let your bulge breathe and get 20% off plus free shipping by using the promo code BUSH at manscaped.com. Let's say you're on a date and your partner catches that Manscaped waistband on your underwear. It's almost a guarantee to raise some eyebrows and get them thinking. Act like a billboard on the highway to Pleasure Town. This is thanks to their Lawnmower 4.0, the best electric trimmer for below-the-waist grooming. Their 4th-generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to the advanced skin-safe technology. The Lawnmower 4.0 is also waterproof, so you can groom in the shower, and also has a 4000K LED spotlight if you need a more precise shave. Beyond ball cleaning, Manscaped is focused on ball comforting with the Boxers 2.0. Boost confidence everywhere you are, knowing that you're wearing the absolute best pack for your sack. These boxers are a game changer, and the features include the jewel pouch, a pouch designed to cradle your boys in their own special space, lined with perforated performance fabric to keep them well ventilated. The fabric is soft, the moisture-wicking boxers breathe without breaking a sweat, the tagless waistband hugs your body without digging in, and it lays flat against your skin to reduce chafing. The front fly opening gives easy access and makes bathroom breaks quick and efficient. Multiple ways for entry and passage for your package. You can even choose from an arrangement of designs and colors ranging from small to triple XL for all my guys out there. From El Jefe, Nighthawk, your boys will be in the right hands. Be sure to be proud of your underwear with Manscaped's Boxers 2.0. Use the promo code BUSH for 20% off plus free shipping. That is 20% off plus free shipping with the promo code BUSH. Thank you to Manscaped for sponsoring this video. And now we're back. All right, next team that we got here is from Gav Staupe, another tone setter here. 1 quarterback, 10 team, half PPR with some IDP stuff, but he didn't include that stuff in the question here. We definitely appreciate it. Mahomes, Cousins, Mills as his main quarterbacks, Harris, Swift as his main running backs, Mike Evans, T. Higgins, Brandon Cooks, a couple other guys at wide receiver there, and then Dawson Knox, David Njoku as his main tight ends. With the 103 in this year's class, all of his picks this year. So 103, 203, 303, and 403, and then all of his picks in the future classes as well. So he's looking at his team. It's a 10-team league. His team's a little bit shallow, in my opinion. I think you'd probably agree. Not a lot of depth on this roster. He said, what's a reasonable ask for Cooks/Evans?
I would, well, I mean, first of all, I'd hit up a contender and see what they'd be willing to give. What would you say for those two? Like,
for both of them in one trade?
I would probably go to a contender and ask for like their first and second.
I'd probably want a small piece on top of a first and second for Brandon Cooks and Evans. I think you can fetch a random first for Evans. I'll take all day. So if you don't have to sell them the same person, if you can sell a random Evans for a random first to anybody, I'm totally cool doing that. If you could sell Cooks for like an early 2, I'd be cool doing that. But if you want to trade them both to the same person because they're trying to compete, they need more wide receiver depth. I'm cool just going, first, second, and like a small piece, like a tight end upside swing, like Cole Kmet or something.
That wouldn't be bad. Or maybe you ask for 2 seconds or a projected early third if they have it. Like that'd be on. I mean, it doesn't even have to be 2023 capital. If you want to say, hey, listen, give me your 2023 first, and if they're looking out of sight, out of mind, where I'm a contender now, I want points now. Maybe you can fetch their 2024 first.
Yeah, maybe if you have to throw a second on top of Evans and Cooks to get that done, I'd totally be cool doing that as well. So a couple options if you're looking to make that move there. He also says, what would you be okay with giving up for Pittman and CD? So we'll talk about Pittman first. What are you cool giving up for Pittman?
I mean, do you think Evans and Cooks would get it done for Pittman?
I mean, if you could somehow get either of those guys using Evans and Cooks, then I would definitely be cool giving up both of them for either of those guys. And I mean, CD's way higher in the like consensus dynasty rankings than Pittman is, but I don't think it should necessarily be that way. Pittman is also a guy that I'm definitely cool with investing, giving your current situation of your team. So if you wanted to go after Pittman and CD, for CD specifically, you might be able to get CD plus for Najee Harris.
Yeah, if you could do that, that's a hard. Like
that's the other thing that I was looking at too, because again, your starting lineup is probably good enough to compete, but you don't have any depth, which is concerning. But you will be adding some rookies too. We got to take that into account. 103, 203, 303 and stuff.
I will say, in your perspective, I'm probably not willing to go out and pay for a stud franchise level piece. I'm more so looking to leverage. Like you could probably get 2 first rounds or 2 first round picks, maybe even a little bit more a pop from Harrison Swift. So if you can say add, I mean, realistically in a 1 quarterback league, do you think you can net 2 1s and a 2 for Harris? A 2023 1, a 2023 2, and a 2024 1 for Harris? Do you think you can net that? And I mean, realistically, Swift's value might be just as comparable, if not maybe like a tiny bit less. So if you can get that type of package, completely desolate your running back core, build around those wide receivers, obviously, see what Evans and Cooks can get you in terms of going from production to longevity, then you could realistically make this team into a very, very strong one by 2024, I'd say. Because right now you're kind of like in no man's land where you have your picks, but you don't have the depth to be able to fully compete, but you have some pieces you can leverage. Leverage any type of, production value you can right now.
Yeah, that's one way of doing it. I also think you are in a position where, because you haven't had your rookie draft yet, 103, 203, 303, 403, you could potentially see if 103 is enough to get it done for either of those wide receivers. Like, would you rather have the 103 or Pittman or CD?
Both those wide receivers easily.
Yeah, exactly. So if you could add those like one of those wide receivers to your team, then you probably could compete with it. This is a really interesting team that I haven't seen this like dynamic in a while, because your starting lineup is good enough to compete. If you added one more, good running back, maybe you send your 203 away for James Conner and your 103 away for Michael Pittman, then probably you could compete with this team.
Yeah, potentially. The depth does have me a little concerned. I'd want to know when the league was formed, because if it's like 3-4 years in, you probably wouldn't be much more than like the 5th or 4th best team, even if you made those moves. But again, if this is a league where you guys just had your startup or had your startup last year and there's no real like true monster, yeah, I could see potentially where my league market's at on that.
Yeah, and his final question is said, given this is probably a rebuild, so again, he knows more about his own league
Okay.
than we do. So maybe there is some monsters in this league, and he's saying this is probably a rebuild. I can't compete. I would do what Danny said: try and sell Harris, Swift, Cooks, and Evans, and see if you can transition into some younger pieces, some future capital, and stuff going forward. But if you do have a reasonable chance to compete, there is moves that you could make that would keep you in a competitive window and still keep you in like relatively good longevity standing because you have all of your future picks.
Yep, I agree. Overall, any other input you have for this team, or should we move on to Steven Hinds?
No, we can move on to Steven's team. He's got a 10-team, 2-quarterback league, half PPR scoring format listed on the screen there. Mahomes, Tannehill, Mac Jones as main quarterbacks. He has Josh Jacobs, Chase Edmonds, J.K. Dobbins as main running backs there. Diggs, Ayuk, Elijah Moore, Brandon Cooks, Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley, and then Dalton Schultz, Pat Freiermuth as his main tight ends. Hasn't had his rookie draft yet either with the 106, 108. Then he has the 202 by the looks of it as well, 208, 405. So a couple picks that he can add to his team. And then he has 2 firsts in 2023, one of them projected early, 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and then all of his picks in 2024. So looking at this team, what are your thoughts on like how well it's constructed? And then we'll get into some of his questions and trades.
Yeah, so I mean, looking at that, obviously, again, you have a very strong wide receiver core with Diggs, Ayuk, Moore, Cooks, Kirk, and Ridley. You got your main running back to compete this year. Obviously, at the quarterback position, you have Mahomes, but I would say you're probably lacking a little bit of upside at the quarterback 2 spot. You have a couple decent depth options, but realistically, you don't have a probably projectable top 15-ish type of quarterback to compete with Mahomes. So that would be, the one concern I'd have to potentially push all the chips in the middle. But ultimately, again, you're going to add the 106, the 108. So realistically, at those spots, that's probably an Olave, Sky Moore, and Jameson Williams type of combo. So your wide receiver core should be set long term. I will say, because you have a projected early 2023 first, I would be, hesitant to go fully in this year. I would probably say this is a 2023 team where, again, if you can get somehow Bijan or Tucker or one of those other running backs, maybe 2 of those running backs to add to this team next year, that you can end up being a top 3 overall team by this point next year.
Yeah, and I mean, by that token, you could probably see what you can get for Jacobs at the midseason point if he scored like 6 touchdowns in the first 8 games or something like that. He might
Edmonds.
be, a top running back. Chase Edmonds, same kind of thing. Rojo, if he gets, thrust into some opportunity as well. So you definitely have some ability to maneuver your running back core. I think your wide receiver core is pretty well set. He talks about some offers that he has for Diggs, and we can kind of quickly get into that before his other questions. But he has 2 offers on the table for Diggs right now. Number 1 is the 102. So 102 straight up for Stephon Diggs, or his own 2023 first.
Both comparable value. Obviously, 102.
Drake London.
Locked and loaded Drake London. I like the upside of your own 2023 first, though. Because I mentioned, like, you have a good team, but you don't have a team that's probably best suited to be the top 3 team this year. More so a team that is probably going to be about middle pack this year. Things could break right, but ultimately you still have the upside of your potential own pick residing in the top 5 type of area. All of the upside is on you getting that 2023 first, because then you can control your path in terms of what you want to do next year. If you have, the 102, which obviously is really good with Drake London, but not your 2023 first, you're kind of hamstrung into a semi-compete, not really know how far I can get type of team. But if you can get that pick back and say you can eventually make moves in season to some contenders, get more capital to potentially get that pick in the 103, 104, 105 range, that's way better than what Diggs is going to provide you from a long-term value standpoint. So yes, I would take your own 2023 first if you could potentially get that back for Diggs.
Yeah, I think the second you make that move, you are punting this year. And I'm selling Jacobs. I'm selling Edmonds. I'm selling probably Tannehill too. It's a 2-quarterback league. I'm sure you can get something decent for him as well. And looking to fill out, maybe another quarterback, a couple running backs in next year's draft class. So I do think I would roll with your own 2023 first and then kind of kickstart my 1-year punt here. So he says, he asked what he should do with his picks. He said J-Mo will be gone, which you already kind of mentioned. I mean, 108 in a 2-quarterback league, would you consider taking Kenny Pickett with 108?
In this, given your own structure right now, probably not. I mean, he's in the discussion, but like if Sky Moore's on the board, I would take Sky Moore over Kenny Pickett. If Olave's on the board, I would take him over Kenny Pickett. Or ultimately, if you could potentially, go to a contender and say, hey, listen, I have the 108 and 202. Give me your 2023 first. They might be willing to do that at that point because they're trying to get the point production right away.
Yeah, or they might be chasing the quarterback with
Yeah.
Pickett too as well. So he also says, how much more should I continue to tear it down? I would probably, if you make the Diggs move for your own first, I would continue to tear it down
Yeah.
like pretty much all the way. Like you keep Freiermuth, you keep Ayuk, you keep Elijah Moore, keep those
More
guys. But I
Ridley.
mean, Cooks, Schultz, Diggs, Jacobs,
Yeah.
Edmonds, Rojo, Tannehill are guys that I'd be looking to shop in that scenario. And he sends a number of trades, but we have broken his team down before. So I believe the right two trades are the ones that we haven't talked about yet.
Okay.
So he gives away Devontae Smith and Kareem Hunt in exchange for J.K. Dobbins and a 2023 third. What are your thoughts on that move?
Okay, so I would personally say that Devontae Smith and Dobbins are more or less similarly valued in Dynasty. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I personally have Dobbins a bit higher, but like I think they should be relatively close.
Yeah, so like let's just say like the difference between going up for Devontae Smith to Dobbins is like a 2023 third. Let's just say
Yeah, something like
hypothetically.
that.
So then it's basically Dobbins and 2/3 for Kareem Hunt, or sorry, it's 2/3 for Kareem Hunt. I think you could have gotten a little bit more on the side you give because I think Kareem Hunt's probably valued about a mid-ish second round pick in 2023.
Yeah, and I
Give or
also
take.
imagine that Dobbins has got a really low standing in terms of his value in your league market because of the
Yeah,
uncertainty around his injury. So I think you might have been able to get him for a bit cheaper. But I think
yeah,
overall, this is not like a bad move.
it's not. Yeah,
Dobbins is
no.
the guy that if you can get him cheap and you guys are out there looking for players that can accumulate in value, I think Dobbins is definitely one of those guys that can.
And adding to that, he does mention in the league dynamic he's in, if you have a young running back that can produce, they are extremely hard to trade for. So if Dobbins goes out and has, an RB7 start to the year where, as soon as he comes back, he's looking like old Dobbins, he's efficient, that Ravens offense is humming and hoeing, you may be able to flip him directly after that. And at that
For
point,
two
with your
ones or
2023
something like
first,
that.
potentially, yeah, if he's showing, maybe he's, I don't want to say this year's DeAndre Swift because they're going to win in different ways, but what would you like this year's Dalvin Cook, this year's
Yeah.
Derrick Henry? Like,
Yeah, if he's having a season like at the back, like even if it's not even like for the full season, maybe he takes a bit to get back from the injury and to close out the 10 games of the season, he scores like 9 touchdowns. He's like the RB, 6 in fantasy or something. Going into next year, he's probably going to have a lot of value, 2 years off the ACL and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
maybe you can flip him at that point in time for, a first and 2 seconds or something like that.
for sure. And as much as this move, I probably would have sided with the other side in terms of pure value, though it was a fair deal. This next move you just did, like, yeah, give me the side you received. 109, 2023 first, 2023 third for Keenan Allen and Juju Smith-Schuster. Like, it's pretty simple to me. I would rather the 109 than Juju. I would rather the 2023 first than Keenan Allen. So then you
Yeah, and then
also
the
get a free
third's
third.
just gravy at that point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're in a good spot. You still have some moves to make to kind of tear this thing down, but you have the ability to turn this, into a monster if you build this one right. You have, decent amount of draft capital. Like Danny said, during your rookie draft, 106, 108, 202. If people are willing to give you more future draft capital to acquire those rookies this year, then I'd definitely be willing to do something like that. Because we're getting into camp hype season, and man, Burks is getting hype. Olave is getting hype. Sky
Moore's getting a
Moore is
lot.
getting hype. Like they're all these rookies that are going to be on the board in that 106 to 108 area are starting to get some hype now. So people are going to buy into those guys. And that could be, an advantage of drafting later than, we typically draft in our rookie drafts is that you get that camp hype around those names. And maybe you can turn those guys into 2023 first instead for higher picks. So getting off the non-patron teams, we'll just close this one out with Daniel Krause and Judoyo, the non-patron teams, 12-team PPR league for Daniel Krause here. Stafford, Wentz, Willis as his main quarterbacks, Jacobs, Spiller, Keontae Ingram, etc. At running back, Devontae Smith, Garrett Wilson, David Bell, Mark Andrews as main tight end, Zach Ertz there as well. Hasn't had his rookie draft yet, 103, 201, 204, 401, and 501 in the rookie draft. And then he has a lot of future picks as well. 3 1s in 2023, 3 1s in 2024, then all of his other picks. So looking at this team, he's got some work to do, I would say. I think he said he orphaned this team. So it had a lot of win now pieces on it.
Yeah.
But he has, 6 1s in the next 2 draft classes and the 103 this year that he hasn't spent yet.
Yep. So it doesn't say here, but you mentioned it is a super flex, right?
It is a 1 quarterback, I think.
Oh, 1 quarterback. Okay, got you. Yeah, I mean,
now that I think about it, I think he spent these picks already because it looks like 103 was Garrett Wilson, 201 was David Bell, et cetera. So I think he has spent these picks already.
Yeah, no, that would make a sense. Regardless, though, Yeah, the first move I'm kind of looking at here is that, if you're trying to 1 year punt, I would say Jacobs doesn't really fit that mold. So if you could potentially, what do you think you can get from a contender for Josh Jacobs? I don't think you can get a one straight up, but could you add, a small piece on this team to potentially leverage for their late first projection?
Yeah, maybe you give him Spiller or something too, and they'll give you
Spiller,
a first, or maybe Ertz or something like that.
yeah, no,
If they need a backup quarterback, I don't know. It's definitely possible. You could maybe they love Malik Willis or something. And you could throw Malik Willis in. I think you got some potential to maneuver there. I would try and get younger at quarterback too, like with
yes,
Stafford. A contender like if they have Deshaun
Fields.
Watson, or Zach Wilson, or Justin Fields, or somebody like that on their roster, you might be able to just go straight one for one in a one quarterback league. I'm not too concerned with trying to get like a crazy amount return for like a guy like Matthew Stafford. If you can just transition him into a young quarterback, I'm totally cool doing that.
Do you think you can get like Wilson in a 2, Wilson in a 3, probably? Or again, like you can look at, Fields or Lawrence straight up because that's probably about market value. But again, like I would take Wilson straight up too, like in your position if you want, but you could probably get a little gravy on top of that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that would definitely make some sense too. He has a couple trades listed here that we can go over real quick.
Yep.
Antonio Gibson, the 101, so Brees Hall presumably, and the 301 is what he gave up in exchange for the 103. So he trades down from 101 to 103, picks up the 204, a 2023 first, 2024 first, and KJ Osborne. So I mean, this trade is really easy for me to evaluate. The 101, what is Brees Hall worth in this package? The 103, honestly, he's probably only worth like the 103, 204, and KJ Osborne, realistically.
I mean, I was gonna say maybe you want to make him the 2023 first and 204 max.
Yeah, like he's not worth a ton more than like the 103. Like the 103 versus
Yeah.
the 101 this year, it's worth more, but it's not worth like a ton more. So let's just say, just to make it even more in your favor, we'll say this Brees Hall is just going to be superstar running back. He's worth the 103 in the 2024 first.
Yeah, like let's just say, max value, which if I was selling Brees Hall, I would love that for him. But let's just say, yeah, even out. Brees Hall 101 equals a 103 in 2024 first. Then you're looking at the 204, a 2023 first, and KJ Osborne for Antonio Gibson the 301. Well, I'll tell you right now, I'd rather a 2023 first over Antonio Gibson. So right off the bat, then you're also getting the 204 and Osborne for the 301. And obviously I would take the higher pick and the piece over the lower pick.
Yeah, pretty easy trade there. So you did a great job on that first one. The second trade here trades away Dalvin Cook, Curtis Samuel, and Noah Fant, and somehow got Mark Andrews in a 2024 first. I
It's gravy.
have no idea how you did that, but great move. I would rather have Mark Andrews than the entire right side of the package. I'd rather have the 2024 first than the entire right side of the package. And you got two of those things for the entire right side of the package.
Yeah, you kind of just greased them up and took them to the woodshed on this one. This was pretty favorable to say the least. I mean, you mentioned it, Mark Andrews over the other side alone.
Yeah, exactly. So you're in a good spot. I mean, you've done a couple savvy moves so far. You've collected 6 ones over the next 2 draft classes. You just need to, continue to sell off some of your aging pieces, and you should be ready to compete probably as soon as like 2023, 2024.
Yep, no, exactly. So overall, we can move on to the final team of the video, and that's going to be listed as Judoyo's team, but actually Judoyo told me this is his brother's recent team, a $500 startup. So you guys can see the scoring settings: 12-team PPR Superflex with a 2.0 tight end premium. And basically, he just kind of said, I was showing him some of your videos. He tried to structure a similar team. So he's got listed here the team and moves he did both pre-draft and during the draft. So team right now, again, Superflex format: Deshaun Watson, Jameis Winston, Tyrod Taylor. Running back: Brees Hall, Travis Etienne, AJ Dillon, etc. there. Wide receiver: Jalen Waddle, Marquise Brown, Traylon Burks, Chris Olave, etc. there. And at tight end, you do have David Njoku to complete that stack with Deshaun Watson, along with 5 firsts in 2023 and 2 seconds in 2023. He also mentions here that he would have gotten, more 2024, 2025 capital, but they actually aren't available to be traded in this league because I'm assuming, people haven't paid in for that. So they don't allow you to trade picks in 2024, 2025. But regardless, having this type of team with that amount of draft capital right off the bat, we'll get into the deals, but excellent start for your first startup dynasty draft he kind of mentioned here.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much I can say about this team. You got a lot of appreciable value at running back. You got, some solid wide receivers. You got a great quarterback in Deshaun Watson. You got some work to do at the tight end positions, the 2-point tight end premium. That's obviously a very valuable position. And Jameis Winston being your quarterback too is also not like the most ideal thing in the world. But I think you're in a great spot knowing that you have 5 2023 firsts to be able to add, a Stroud or a Young as your second or third quarterback, and then maybe another tight end in the mix as well. So how many of these trades do you want to get into since we're running a little bit long on this video?
Yeah, we'll get into a few of them. So he does mention here he wants to be called F-bomb in the video, and basically the main question once we go through a couple of the deals, so it'll be quick. Can he compete next year? Does he need 2 rebuild years? Which, looking at this team right off the bat, like, yeah, you can absolutely compete next year with those firsts. But looking at the main deals, we'll basically see the during the draft deals, I would probably say, or a couple of them. Or no, he does actually have the end result. So ultimately, what he traded overall. So we can look at that. He traded the 104, 304, 504, 904, 1104, 1209, and 1304 in exchange for the 212, the 310, 702, 4 2023 first, and a 2023 second there as well. So ultimately here, 4 2023 first, assuming they're random first, are all probably going to be valued in the late round 3 to mid round 5, late round 5 type of area in terms of what their startup capital is. So let's just say you had 4 picks in that range. Yeah, give me your side.
The easy way for me to break this down is that you sweep the 4 2023 first, and that cancels out everything plus 504 beyond. Easily give me the 4 first, and probably the 304, to be honest too. You could probably, if you offered me 4 2023 first for my startup 304, 504, 904, 1104, 1209, and 1304, I would take the 4 first in a heartbeat. So
I would too.
That pretty much just cancels out everything there. Then you also get the 212 and the 310 and the second for trading down from 104. That's basically how I kind of broke that down.
Yeah, or I mean, you didn't even add the 702.
702, sorry, and the 702, yeah.
Yeah, and then when you add the gravy on top, that the 212 ended up getting you Deshaun Watson. Like, yeah,
exactly.
But either way, I mean, you basically have a progressive struggle with a team that would look as though you're in a semi-compete build right out of the startup.
Yeah, so Watson being suspended is probably going to help you out a little bit, tank your own first-round pick. And those young running backs, maybe Breece Hall doesn't secure a workload right away. That also will probably help you out a little bit to begin the season. So, again, you have a lot of cornerstone pieces. You got rookie wide receivers that'll develop in 2023. Once you add, if you can add like a Michael Mayer, CJ Stroud, a running back or two, a wide receiver or two to this team, you should be ready to compete as soon as 2023.
Yep, for sure. But either way, if you guys have made it this far, about 50-minute video, leave a like down below and comment progressive struggle, because ultimately, I swear, the common theme of this video was just a bunch of teams with no running backs and a ton of 2023 first, just how we like it.
Yeah, literally the same exact team for like 8 straight teams. So we definitely appreciate you guys for sticking around to the end. If you did, like I said, like, comment, subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, check out the TikTok for fantasy news and a number of other things. Check out fantasystockexchange.co if you want a Ladster sweater like Danny's holding up. If you want a league winner mug like I'm holding up right now, got a ton of stuff going on over there. Check out the Patreon if you want to be on future episodes of Dynasty Decisions. That'll skip the line for you. Our rankings, manifesto, Dynasty, and redraft available one of 2 ways. Patreon, like I said, link down below in the description. And also check out Underdog Fantasy using promo code FSE at sign up and first deposit. You'll get access to both of our rankings for free. Get a ton of practice for your home leagues, all that good stuff. So with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.